humans, we have the ability to become mindful. A dolphin, a chimpanzee, or an eagle, they can be instinctively in the present moment. But a chimpanzee cannot drown in worry and then decide to become mindful. What all of spiritual books tell you is that you have the seeds of the Buddha, of the God force inside you. And it's so simple. The moment you decide to become mindful, you water the seeds of the God force and enlightenment within you. So imagine you're a very, very angry person, or very irritated and hungry, and then you decide to become mindful. And suddenly you water the seeds of godliness within you. See, an animal cannot do this. An animal can instinctively, let's say a dolphin, can instinctively swim in the Pacific, but they don't have a choice to become the Buddha or not. If you are eating your dinner mindfully, you are literally the Buddha having dinner. If you are placing your attention on your little daughter with completely caring eyes, 100% presence, you are literally the Buddha in the presence of that child. What's interesting about mindfulness, mindfulness is like a very kind mother, if you think about it. What does a kind mother do? A kind mother will embrace the child if the child is dancing and laughing. And a kind mother will also embrace the child if the child is hungry, sleepy, and irritated. And this is exactly what mindfulness does. Mindfulness hovers over impermanent moods and thoughts. It's not cold, it's not heartless. Like when you bring mindfulness to your emotions, you're not being heartless. You are allowing yourself to feel emotions, but this kind mother called mindfulness is embracing the emotion without interfering with the emotion. And what the Vedas and Buddhism say is that when you decide to embrace your life with mindfulness, you literally invite the presence of soul, the Buddha, Babaji, into your life. You become being, spirit. And think about what this does to your relationships. Imagine one of your friends is in pain and you go sit by them. You bring yourself to the moment. You become very mindful of them. And your eyes become mirrors of mindfulness. Do you know what you're saying to your friend at that point? You are saying, I deeply care about you. I am now here with you. I am feeling your pain, and I want to be here with you. Or imagine you do that on a romantic date. There's nothing more romantic than being extremely present with your eyes, with your speech. If you want to give maximum romantic love, it's very easy. Hard and easy at the same time. It's easy because if you become present and you come to a decision to not just talk, but to see into the other person, to listen, to acknowledge their presence. That's very romantic because you are showering that person with attention. And you know what attention is? Attention carries the God force. If you have 5 rose bushes in your garden and you start to pay attention, any gardener will tell you that these roses will start to thrive. The same thing with your puppy dog. The same thing with your teenage son. Attention is the steering wheel that steers the God force towards the rosebush, your teenage son, or your lover. And above all, yourself. Somebody said, Kambiz, on a special occasion on Valentine's Day, I sat on the staircase without a lover, and I cried and I cried for 2.5 hours. I cried from the bottom of my heart, saying, God, why did you leave me without a lover on Valentine's Day? And if I were to love you very deeply, I would say, would you ever cry that hard if you had a little bit of love for yourself? I mean, okay, all of us need hugs. All of us would like to have a lover. All of us love companionship. That aside, would you cry 2.5 hours on the staircase if you had some relationship with yourself? So I'm not advising loneliness. I'm saying that kind of loneliness comes because we have no relationship with ourselves. Because a man cannot save you. You can decide to share your joy with a man, but if you have no relationship with yourself, 5 men cannot save you. And you know what's the worst kind of loneliness? The worst kind of loneliness is to be in bed with another person and to feel really lonely. That's horrible. Let's come to mindfulness. Mindfulness brings our attention to mass consciousness. Let's say in 1971, the fashion designers decide that every woman should wear a mini skirt. And you have mindfulness and you realize, oh, this fashion business is being designed by somebody in New York, and I don't have to wear a miniskirt if I don't want a miniskirt. In other words, mindfulness helps you to see through mass consciousness. You go into an elevator, everybody's like this with their iPhone. And then you can decide that that's mass consciousness. And I don't have to be in mass consciousness. If you don't like a miniskirt, don't wear it. If you like it, wear it. You're not the mass. Mindfulness sometimes gives us very, very deep insights that are buried way in the subconscious mind. Let's imagine that I always feel lonely. I just always say, why is life so lonely? And then I start to become mindful. I follow the breath. And I start to become mindful of my emotions of loneliness. And then something magical happens. The Buddha said, if you become very mindful of an emotion like loneliness, you're going to get an insight about an underlying emotion deeper than loneliness. For example, if you have no self-love, then through mindfulness, you get an insight that, oh my God, the reason I cried 2.5 hours on Valentine's Day because I'm lonely, I just practiced mindfulness for 3 days my mindfulness showed me a layer deeper than loneliness. I realized that I feel so lonely because I have no relationship with myself. I have no self-love. I cannot spend 10 minutes with myself in my garden. So not even 5 men can help me on Valentine's Day. So the Buddha says, apply mindfulness to a very difficult emotion, and you will go several layers deeper than the obvious initial emotion. For example, you're a cigarette smoker and you apply mindfulness to one cigarette. You feel the weight of it. You smell the smell of it. You feel it around your lips. You feel the warmth of the smoke. And if you apply enough mindfulness to a cigarette, suddenly you get an insight in terms of why the nicotine is so clingy. You realize what you're addicted to. It's not the cigarette itself. How about mindfulness of the breath? You can become a noble princess. You can become a noble king by simply becoming mindful of breath comes in, breath goes out. I mean, sometimes I've seen people so graceful. You just want to hug them, you know? You go to an outdoor cafe and somebody's just mindful of their breath. And you know, you don't have to do this every moment. But if you become mindful of breath comes in, breath goes out, suddenly you're putting down the teacup in a lighter way. Your footsteps are not clacking on the asphalt. Instead of shouting to somebody from 5 yards away, you're going closer and saying, hello. This all comes from mindfulness of breathing. Even if you have a lot of physical pain, I'm looking at Reina, and all of my love is with Reina. She's had this surgery on the neck, and I'm saying to Reina, no matter how painful it becomes, become the Buddha. Apply mindfulness to the pain in the neck. And then breath comes in, breath goes out. And then say to the God force, dear Lord, my neck is yours. My neck muscles are yours. My pain is yours. I'm checking out of this hotel, and every time I breathe, I want the kindness of the Buddha, of the Lord, to breathe into my neck. So I turn my neck over to you. You can turn your pack of cigarettes over to mindfulness or to me. You can turn your fight with your wife to me. I'm used to it. Every day, people turn things over. You can do it. You can turn it over to your brother. Turning over something to another power will dismantle your ego. It'll really help your ego. Let's say you have poverty consciousness. You say, you know what? I'm tired of money worries. I turn it over to the Buddha. I don't care. What about mindfulness of emotions? The Buddha says, don't interfere. If you're full of anger, turn on the lamp of mindfulness, because she's a kind mother. And a kind mother is just going to embrace your anger. It will not forcefully get rid of it. The kind mother just hugs you and says, I am here. I know you're angry, but I am bigger than your anger. And then you just let that mother hug you. It's like a transportable, kind mother. So apply the Mother of Mindfulness to your cigarette, to your anger. Like that. But we never interfere. You see, people get confused. They think that being mindful of anger is shutting down your anger. It's not. You're just embracing it. With breath comes in, breath goes out. And then you know what happens? Suddenly you gain insight. As long as you're breathing, as long as you're mindful, let's say you're really worried about money, and then you call in mindfulness. And mindfulness just embraces the money worry. You start to get insights. You realize that even if you won $2 million in the lottery, you would still be worried. It's an illness. It's not reality. You don't trust yourself. If every dolphin in the ocean gets a fish, you, my friend, are going to get a fish because you're created by that force. As long as you don't drive yourself insane, there's a fish for you. You're made of that force. All you've got to do is just trust yourself. And what about mindfulness of the mind? I mean, this is so powerful. You know, suddenly bring attention to your mind. Watch this point between the two eyebrows with a very serene smile. Put on an internal smile. Bring your attention between the eyebrows. Imagine that that's the movie screen of your mind. And then wait and wait with curiosity to see what the next thought is. And what's unbelievably pleasant is that as you start to mind your mind, as you start to wait with curiosity to see what the next thought is, you will never have the next thought. This is because the one who's waiting for the next thought is the Buddha, is Sai Baba, is the Lord. The Buddha says if you're eating your hamburger with mindfulness, it is the Buddha eating the hamburger. In other words, you have the seed of the most incredible gift in the universe. You can be in a taxi cab, bang, turn on mindfulness. And then you have the kindest mother in the world embracing it. So why don't you mind the mind sometimes? Let's say you can't go to sleep. You can do two things. With every cycle of breathing, inhale, exhale, count 1, 2, 3, 4. Go up to 10 with every complete cycle of breathing. And then when you get to 10, with every complete cycle of breathing, come back to 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Mindfulness of breathing. Or stare at the white wall in your room right now. Imagine that white wall is the movie screen of your mind. And then just be very, very curious. Stare at your mind. Be very curious with a smile to see what the next thought is going to be. As long as you mind your mind, you're not going to have a mind, meaning very calm mind. And then your relationships. Imagine what it would mean to somebody who loves you if you decide to become mindful of them. Do you know in one workshop, I asked the front row, they were all couples. I asked the front row, what is the color of your spouse's eyes? Out of 5 couples, 3 guessed the wrong color. I mean, they were close, but they had never taken time. For example, do you know that your lover's eyes have some specks in them? Do you know that some of you have a beloved who has a little wrinkle here in the middle of the chest? Have you ever watched the dimple in your beloved's cheek? I'm not guilting you. I'm just saying, imagine you become mindful of your lover or your child or your uncle, and you just go up to them and say, you know, what would I do without your love? I'm just so grateful that I have you in my life. You know, it's the same thing you're doing with your rose bush when you place attention. Final comment, you know and I know that every moment has its own specific needs. If you go to a birthday party and they're blowing out the candles, that moment has some specific needs. If you go to a funeral, that occasion has some specific needs. So what I'm saying is all of us have to take care of the needs of this moment. If you go to a computer software exam, that moment in the exam room has its specific needs. And what I'm really trying to say is mindfulness places us in the present moment. If we're not in the present moment, we're breaking natural law. In other words, if you go to a funeral and you're not there, then you're not paying attention to the needs of the mother of the boy who has just lost a boy. If you go to a software exam and your mind is elsewhere, you're not meeting the needs of that moment in the examination room. If I come to you, all of you, and say, here I am, here's Kambiz, then I'm not placing any attention on you. So that doesn't do anything. My attention is not here with you. And you know, and I know, anytime we're not in the moment, we're going to have pain. And you know why? Because the moment has some needs. You know, your 13-year-old boy comes to you to talk about life. It's the first time he's fallen in love. He's got a need. And if you're not there, you're going to suffer. He's going to suffer. You're breaking natural law. How do we do it? Because all of you are stressed with jobs and your modern schedule. The best that I've found out in my 68 years, I just pray. You know, I just pray to mindfulness. I pray to some energy that's keeping me alive. And I say, help me discover something big this year. Because all of you have multiple layers of potential. And it's going to scare you like hell when you want to go two layers above what you are right now. So just pray. Because our ego is not going to take that step. And then you realize what you're praying for, it wasn't that difficult. It's just for each one of us that our own comfort zone seems difficult. Most of these issues are not that difficult. Hopefully between now and next Sunday, turn to a very kind mother who embraces your anger, your anxiety, your worry. Call that mother in. If you have a pain in your neck, call the mother. Say, I turn my neck over to you. Or your mortgage payment. or whether your next painting is going to sell or not. Here's the real secret. Every one of you is endowed with a lot of power. And every one of us has one cancer cell. That cancer cell is not trusting the self. In every case. If every dolphin can eat, you and I can eat. We've all been equipped. The one cancer cell, and this is very common. Most people, they have one major fear. The biggest fear most people have is to completely trust their own loveliness, their own body, their own humor. You look at Instagram, very few people trust their own unique page. Most people are posing in bikinis. They're just copying each other. Very scary to people. And then there it is, the easiest thing in the world. Just leave yourself alone, like the dolphin, and just live. Hannes should just paint as Hannes. Children love Reina. So Reina is designed for children. Yoast can bring people together and facilitate them. It's none of your business to interfere with that. The one cancer cell of the world, and everybody has some of this, we mistrust our most natural self. We don't feel beautiful and glorious amongst 9 billion. That's the cancer cell. We're not flowing. Somebody says, oh, but I've got $300. How can I flow? I say, you just leave yourself alone. The 300 will turn into 1,100 in 15 days or less. Let's close our eyes in this meditation. Allow your religion in this meditation to be complete trust of the loveliness that you were born with. Nobody else is important in this meditation.